Welcome to Networkingstar. My name is Jeff Boyle, and here on Networkingstar, we work with all kinds of very innovative entrepreneurs across the world. Today, I'm joined with Dana Robinson, and she has an amazing resume as a pitch trainer, an angel investor, and she's on the board with E8 Angels that helps with all kinds of different things from investment to also making sure that you're really paired with the right company. Dana, thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure. It's great to see you again, Jeffrey.
So I've had experience in my career of working with angel investors, working with friends, family, and just the list to be able to raise money for your business. Tell me a little bit about how it is that you coach these new entrepreneurs and even existing entrepreneurs to be able to get money from investors.
Yeah, the reason that I think it's important to have some coaching and training, and I love working with entrepreneurs who are trying to raise money, is that I've seen so many times where somebody's giving a pitch and they've got a great idea, but it just doesn't quite make sense. Investors don't get it, and you can see that they could improve so much with just a little bit of tweaking. And before I became an angel investor, I'd been doing presentation skills training. So I noticed these things. I noticed what people are doing when their pitch or their presentation works really well. And I noticed what's going on when they've completely missed it. It's not working and investors are confused. So I started just doing pitch coaching with companies that I had invested in. And then that's turned into where I've developed a training program related to all things pitching. And
well, I think it's a really big niche to be able to do that because, money, that's one of the main reasons why most of these companies fail is they simply don't have the capital. A great idea without the ability to pay for it is really become useless. And I know one of the big things that you talk about is really having a relationship, how to create that relationship with the investors. Why is that so important?
Well, it's really important that when somebody goes in and they're pitching, that they're thinking about how can I develop this relationship and to be authentic. Because from the investor perspective, investors find it really important to get to know the founders. If you ask any investor what their top criteria are when making an angel investment or even for VCs, their criteria is team. Is this team capable of running this business and growing it? And so investors really invest in teams and they want to get to know the founders. They want to see if they want to develop confidence in their ability and in their capability and in their commitment. So, it's like anything, right? If you're going to do business with someone, you want to get to know them. You want them to, you want to think that you can know and like and trust them. That's the golden rule of business, right? People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And so if we go in with this mentality of trying to be authentic and develop a relationship, it just makes that easier.
Yeah, well, you talk about that. That's the same thing in sales. It's the same if the person likes you and knows you. But that's very difficult because a lot of these angel investment companies and groups, they get a lot of pitches. They're constantly seeing new people. What is one of the best ways that you help a budding entrepreneur, even existing entrepreneur, create those relationships and get those angel investors to know them and to like them?
I think one of the most important things to start with is to take the focus off the deck a little bit. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see is that founders, as they're preparing for a pitch, they're just very focused on the deck. And, and the last people review my deck. What do you think of my deck? They send ahead, this is my deck. Can I come and pitch? But if founders are putting all of their effort into their deck and that's all their preparation, then they miss this opportunity to connect with their listeners, which is in this case, investors. So I believe quite firmly that delivering an engaging pitch is just as important as having a good deck.
So explain what that means as an engaging pitch. It's really, as I go back, I've been really fortunate with different partners to be able to raise millions of dollars for different ventures that we've started. And each one of those investors that we went before, each of them had different criteria, and so it was really a huge adaptation each time we would raise the money. What do you think the best way to be able to get them to know and like you? I guess what's some of the number one tips that you would give people?
Well, I think the most important thing is to go in with this mindset, like you did, that you were being investor focused, you were adapting to the situation. But if you go into with this mindset of being authentic and building relationships, then you're more likely to be engaging. And so, to have an engaging pitch, it means being authentic. If you're enthusiastic, show your enthusiasm. And also to be focused on investors when you're talking, to be looking at them, even if it's online, look at the camera, look at the pictures, try to create what feels like a conversation. I've seen a lot of times people are so focused on their deck that they're looking at their deck, or they're looking at the wall behind them, which is even worse. So instead of focusing on the deck, to really focus on the investors and to try to come in with that, like you did, a relationship building mindset. And like one of the ways to do that is to really, show your enthusiasm, show your personality. But I know that this is hard, and it takes a lot of practice in delivering to be able to walk in and to feel natural.
Yeah, I think that's the big key. You say to be able to
Yeah.
feel natural. I think sometimes I remember in the beginning, I was so nervous that it was so difficult to be myself because I was tripping over words. I was tripping over myself. And so basically what you're saying is just like anything else, you're going to have to practice it. And so take me, for example, as a 26-year-old, when I was doing my first presentation to investors, I couldn't get anybody in the beginning to be interested at all. And I was so passionate. I believed so much about it. Sometimes even it felt almost combative. And of course, I had to fix me a whole bunch of that. What do you tell that 26-year-old that's coming looking for a couple $1 million for that new venture? What do you say to that raw, enthusiastic, but just petrified, nervous new entrepreneur?
I think the first thing that they need to realize is to say, this process is going to take a while. You're not going to walk into a meeting with your first pitch and walk out with a few $1 million. That just doesn't happen. So treat it a bit like dating, right? You want to get to know each other. And like dating, nobody should make a commitment after one date. Right? So you want to get to know the investors and let them get to know you. And one of the things that I say, like the first step to do is to work on your messaging and to practice without slides. Be able to explain every aspect of your business, every aspect of the pitch, very concisely and clearly with no slides first. And practice that until it feels like you can say that. Show your personality, show your enthusiasm, but you're not going to be tongue-tied because you've practiced how to say it.
Yeah, I think that's
great advice. Then practice with slides, right? Because you need to be able to explain yourself so that you're engaging.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I hadn't considered that as maybe because perhaps it's something that after some practice I became automatic, but rarely do they let you just present. Almost never, unless it's some of these angel investor groups where they bring in lots of people who almost like a panel of Shark Tank type of thing where you could do it. But explain part of that process too is getting in front of potential investors, and that itself is a task in itself. How do you coach the person to even be able to get in front of possible investors?
Well, this is where the messaging is important. That when you make contact with potential investors, first of all, you're talking to the right people, because this is a relationship that has to work for both parties. So you also want to be attracting the right kind of investor. So that takes some homework on who's your ideal investor. And then you really want to make sure that as you're communicating to them, whether it's by an application or an email or send your deck ahead, that your messaging is really clear and concise. If it's confusing, if you're not able to explain what you do and how your business is going to be a business, then they're just going to be confused. And so creating that messaging that's clear in a way you can write it down and articulate it will help investors understand if you're a fit or not. But then this is where it's important to know how to use your deck. Oftentimes groups or VCs say, send your deck ahead or upload it, and that's fine. So in that case, you can treat your deck a little bit like a resume. It might get you a meeting, but it's not going to get you the investment. So send them enough information to make them curious. But then when you're pitching in front of them, your deck is more like a support tool, not the pitch, because the pitch is way more than your deck.
Yeah, and I actually was sitting there thinking as you're talking about it, it's like, boy, I made so many mistakes in the beginning, and I look back on that, it's like, oh, I wish I could have given myself some tips, and that's why I guess even your role as in a pitch coach, what an interesting concept, because I'm sure you've seen a million examples of me as a 26-year-old just completely messing not just the sending the deck in, but getting there and really not being prepared for it's not an onslaught, but it sure can feel that way when you're first doing it. So yeah. Is that kind of what helped you as you just saw to start coaching people in this process, as you just saw so many mistakes that these new entrepreneurs and even existing entrepreneurs were making?
Exactly. I saw a lot of mistakes, and I saw where, with just changing their mindset a little bit and changing their preparation, it could just be, the whole pitch could be easier for investors to understand, because that's really what we're after. We want investors to understand and remember your pitch and you. And if they're confused, and if it feels like an onslaught of information to where they stop listening, then they're not going to remember you, and they're not going to invite you back for a second meeting. So it takes some tweaking in the preparation to make that a lot more effective.
And I'll give you just some of my experiences, and you'll be able to kind of give me some direction on how you help people. You before talked about it being marriage, or not marriage, but dating before you do that. I would say business many times is like marriage without love, that you have this huge importance on first creating that relation of trust and then maintaining that relationship of trust. Do you also help people after they have acquired that on what they need to do to help them maintain that relationship with these investors?
Yes. Well, I usually come back in when they're raising money again, but my advice is to maintain those relationships, because those early investors are the ones that are going to support you as you grow. So it's important to have regular updates. It's important to let investors know the good, the bad, and the ugly, because the worst time to be asking for a follow-on round of more money is when things have gone really bad and you're out of cash, and now you need your investors to come in, and they're going, we didn't know that this was tanking. Why didn't you let us know? So I think if just being in the habit of regular updates, whether it's monthly or quarterly, and to have investors come in and ask questions, have a Q&A every once in a while, so that investors can really see what's going on. And also keep in mind, investors, now that they have a vested interest in your success, investors are there. They've got experience that you could tap into as advisors or mentors, even if it's just short term. I mean, some of the companies I've invested in, will call me up and say, I'm pitching to VCs next month. Can you help me with my pitch? I mean, I'll do that for free because I want them to succeed. And I know a lot of investors with skills, whether it's around finances or strategic planning or marketing, that will very readily offer some advice to the companies they've invested in.
I think the commonality between all of what you're saying is relationships. And you said that
Mm-hmm.
right from the beginning, the relationships, creating the relationship, improving the relationship, and then maintaining that relationship as you go through it. And so as a new entrepreneur, sometimes you just think, I just need money, right? I need the money. But sometimes there's bad money, right? There's the wrong type of investor. You explain a little bit about kind of what you were saying in the beginning. It's this dating. How do you teach a person looking for money to look for the right money from the right group or the right person?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. It's important to be focused on who your ideal investor is so that you're receiving investment from the right kind of investor. One of the first things that I do in my pitch training sessions is to create an ideal investor profile where we dig in and spend some time brainstorming on who's your ideal investor. And it needs to match where the company is based on stage and industry and focus and geography, for example, but also to then match that with what the investor does. If sometimes clients come to me and they say, every investor I talk to says I'm too early. So what's wrong with my pitch? It's like, well, maybe you're talking to the wrong investors. So you need to be talking to the investor that matches the stage of your revenue or the stage of your growth. And investors are usually pretty open about what stage they invest in and what their criteria are. So that's the first step, is to match that. But then also to think about what kind of investor you want as far as support going forward. Do you want a board member? Do you want mentors? Do you want advisors? Do you want people that can introduce you to customers or other investors? You need to think about what you need and then find the people that want to support companies like that. And also mission is very important. E8 Angels, which is the angel group that I'm in, invests in clean tech. So somebody has to come in with a good sustainability story or they're not going to get in front of the group. And we get a lot of applications from people that really don't have that, but they're just desperate and they're sending applications to every angel group out there. And that's just a waste of time. It's much better to be targeted. It's like a good marketing campaign. If it's targeted very clearly on who your target market is, your ideal customer, it'll be more effective. It's the same with creating an ideal investor profile.
So with E8, you obviously have a very specific niche that you're going after. And you think about it for a clean tech company, how much you would be able to offer, especially because you're seeing successes and failures within the clean tech. Explain a little bit about that, is how it is that you pick this match that so it's the right kind of money with the right kind of expertise. I mean, everybody watches Shark Tank. Well, most entrepreneurs watch Shark Tank with just like, man, I could get the money. But what a lot of those guys on Shark Tank will do when they really want something is they're pitching that new entrepreneur on how they're going to help that person grow the new business. Why is that so important to be able to pick the right niche and the right investor and the right money?
It's important because if investors are committed to your mission, or they're interested in your industry, or they're committed to the type of business that you are growing, then they're more invested in your growth. So they will be supportive, particularly when things go bad, right? Everybody, is happy to have companies in their portfolio when things are going great. But if something's going bad and you have good relationships with your investors, then those are the ones that will step up and help, whether you suddenly need more money or you're having trouble with sales traction and you need some advice. I have seen cases where it's been quite dramatic. And, if you look at a business on paper, or if you look at their deck, you think, I'm not going to put money into a sinking ship. But then you meet the founder. The founder comes back and talks to people. And actually, I can think of a really good example. It was when COVID hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Funding just stopped for months. And so E8 shifted. Instead of inviting new companies in, we first talked to our portfolio companies because they were having trouble raising their next rounds. And there were cases where companies came in and said, my funding round collapsed just as COVID hit. I'm coming back to my angels. And they raised money by talking to their investors in a group setting on Zoom, of course, because it was COVID, with no slides, and just explained what was happening, how they were committed, and what the plan was. And they succeeded in raising money that just sending a deck ahead would never have done.
And I think basically what you're saying also with that is when you pick the right partner to invest in your business, you're getting that partner's portfolio of contacts in the process as well. This is such a deep and even nuanced type of conversation. What is the thing that I've missed asking you that you want that person to know that's going to make a pitch?
I think the most important thing is to go in really with that mindset of being authentic and building relationships, but knowing that takes practice, and that pitching and communication is a skill, right? It's like if you and I wanted to go play tennis and decide we're going to play in a doubles tournament in a month, we would need to practice. We could watch videos, we could read books, but we're not going to get better unless we practice. And pitching is like that. It's a skill. It takes lots of practice. If you need to improve faster, get some coaching or learn from others who are good at it. But it takes practice, and expect that skill development takes time. But don't give up, because that will be the difference.
And I think that what you just said right there is perfect, because don't give up. I mean, you think of it, and I know it's a little bit different, but J.K. Rowling's with her just amazing, famous books now, how many times was she rejected before somebody finally took a chance on her? And now it's one of the most successful books with the Harry Potter that you've ever heard. And I know it's a little bit different, but that's essentially what she was doing, is asking somebody to take a bet on her. And I just look back into my experience. I'm sure happy I didn't give up on the first rejection, or the second, or the third, or the fourth. And where I saw people as rejecting me, so many of them were giving me these tips, and my pitch evolved and I got better at it. It's really quite the experience. Dana, tell people where to find you and how it is that they can get some of your coaching.
Okay, well, I'd love to meet people and connect. You can find me on LinkedIn at Dana Sather Robinson, and you can look for my website, pitch4impact.com. And I always have, I do training one-on-one, and I also have occasional workshops. So there's plenty of opportunity to learn. And I have LinkedIn Lives on my LinkedIn page, so there's a lot to learn.
Well, I can tell you from a guy that's failed a lot in this process and had some occasional wonderful victories in the process, that having somebody that could have held my hand in the beginning would have been priceless. The cost to hire a coach is so much less expensive than spending time spinning your wheels. So I hope people will take you up on that. And it's something that can really advance people so much faster by understanding the pitfalls that can happen in this. So thank you for being with us, Dana.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jeffrey. I look forward to seeing you again soon.